Hi, welcome to a special edition of the NWI.com Political Roundtable. I'm editorial page editor Doug Ross, here with Democratic candidate for governor John Gregg. John, welcome.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back in Northwest Indiana.
Well, let's talk about that four-letter word that everybody's talking about, jobs. What do you do?
You know, absolutely. I've traveled the state of Indiana going on 21 months. All people talk about is jobs. Got a lot of opportunities in Indiana, but nowhere are the opportunities greater than what we have in northwestern Indiana. Whether it's returning to our roots in agriculture and the phenomenal changes there, or manufacturing. And no place knows about manufacturing and advanced manufacturing better than Northwest Indiana. Life sciences, energy, and of course logistics. And again, Northwest Indiana, we've got the Deepwater Port at Burns Harbor, we've got a Gary Airport, we've got rail, we've got interstate. Phenomenal opportunities in northwestern Indiana, phenomenal ones.
Well, we talked about energy last time I saw you, and you made the point that why aren't we making the parts for wind turbines
Absolutely.
here? So what's stopping somebody from doing it right now?
You know what bothers me, and for some of the folks that aren't aware of this, almost 85 to 90% of those wind turbines you see, they come from Western Europe. I mean, that blade's made out of aluminum composite that ought to be made at Alcoa, either in Lafayette or down on the Ohio River at Boonville. That pole that holds it up ought to be made out of Lake County steel, instead of coming from Western Europe. That copper wire in it could come from the old Essex plant in Fort Wayne. Part of the problem is some unfair trade agreements. As I understand it, it's kind of part of what happens, and that also leads to the problem we've seen in our steel industry, our automotive industry, and I'm one of those that don't buy into that free and fair trade because it's not free and it's certainly not been fair, and that's something we've addressed kind of in our jobs package. But we've got opportunities here in Indiana. If it's going to be made, we ought to be making it in Indiana. And no place understands manufacturing and advanced manufacturing better than right up here in the region.
Okay, now you'd be governor of the state if you're elected.
Sure.
And what you seem to be talking about are some issues that are kind of federal issues. So how do you get your bully pulpit to have a wider audience?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you are governor of the entire state, but just dealing with the trade practices themselves, the free and fair trade, is one thing. You work with the congressional delegation, with Pete Visclosky, who already is opposed to such things like that, but you work with others. But in our jobs program, we've talked about creating more exports. And with the exports and the intermodal opportunities here, I mean, we could be putting stuff on a big barge right here at Burns Harbor and shipping it up the St. Lawrence Seaway. In order to ensure that there is free and fair trade, we're wanting to do what some other states have done, Utah and Texas to name two. They intercede on behalf of small and mid-sized businesses if they feel these businesses are getting the short end of a sharp stick on some of these free and fair trade items that they cannot afford the $300,000 or $400,000 legal fees. In those states, the state steps in and sees to it that it's enforced. They take on the suit. They fight with the Commerce Department and fight internationally. I'm saying it's time we do the same thing for our Indiana businesses.
Okay. Since you mentioned the port, I guess that opens the topic of transportation. You know what's happening with the Klein Avenue Bridge and the Ileana Expressway, roads and bridges in general in Indiana. Why don't we address that issue?
You know, that's absolutely something we have to do. I've said since January of 2011, if that Klein Avenue Bridge went from Indianapolis into Hamilton County, it would have been fixed in about 72 hours. That's just wrong for that bridge to have been closed, and it shows that some areas of the state are not treated as well as others. I don't live northwest, but I live in an area, Doug, that's southwest, and we feel disconnected too. 60% of our bridges have to be totally refurbished or replaced. The toll road money is gone, and I know what a touchy subject, and rightfully so that is, but that toll road money is gone. We've got to do something about our roads and bridges. We've also got an opportunity right here in northwest Indiana. about 30 plus miles of rail coming up the western side of the state, and we've got north-south rail, and we need to be doing that. That's all part of transportation. That's all part of logistics. That Gary Airport ought to just be a booming business. And when you look at the map, see the rail, see the interstates, see the airport and the freshwater ports, and then see where we're just located all over the state where we can touch such opportunities for every corner of the state.
Well, now, I agree with you. The question is, how do you pay for it?
You know, first of all, they found about $500 million down in Indianapolis since January. And some may say, well, you always keep mentioning that. We don't know how much money we've really got. We don't know if there's a surplus or not. I can tell you that the priority has to be to replace that bridge. I don't think it has to be tolled. I think that's wrong. I think once we get there and we can actually do an independent audit of the books, find out how much money we have, there are some basic infrastructure needs that needs to be prioritized, along with education, because you can't talk jobs unless you've got a well-trained workforce. So at that point, find out how much money we actually have, and then figure out our priorities. We've made a lot of proposals, my running mate and I, State Senator Vi Simpson, but I'm pleased to say that the overwhelming majority of our proposals, we've found ways to pay for them. I call that the Washington, Indiana way rather than the Washington, D.C. way. And I need to tell you, you say Washington, since I'm up north, but where I'm from, we say Washington. So, but we have, and that's a huge difference. We want to try to leave that surplus, since it's unknown, we want to leave that there for that rainy day that may come along. Or we've got to realize how much of that money is owed in pension funds, unemployment loans to the federal government. 900 million of that supposed surplus came from cuts in education. So we have to find out what we've really got and prioritize. But I can tell you the expressway, roads and bridges, not just up here, but all across Indiana, they have to be priorities, because an investment in infrastructure is an investment in Indiana.
Well, we talk about education, you know, about the $300 million that was cut, and then all of a sudden somebody checked, it must be a heck of a couch to have money like that stashed in the cushions, but, you know, found all of this money, and it never got restored.
Right.
So there's the funding issue, but then there's also, you know, the school vouchers and, you know, major changes in education over the last several years. So where are we headed next, do you think?
You know, there's... I want to give the governor credit, as all of our governors have done, going back to Bob Orr, of addressing education. But there's something I would do different that I believe is a clear contrast to either of my opponents. I am the one with a record that has invested in education. I'm the one with the record that has ran a university. I've balanced a budget. I've cut taxes, and I've brought people together by presiding over a 50-50 House. So those are things I challenge people to look at. But the truth of the matter is there's been $600 million cut from K through 12. We have to quit demonizing our public school teachers and public education. The day I'm elected is when the war on public education and public educators stop. They need to have a seat at the table. They deserve a seat at the table, but not just teachers. A principal, a school superintendent. What about a parent? We need to be more inclusive. Best ideas don't come out of Indianapolis. They come from all over Indiana. More inclusive is a key. Leadership brings people together. Leadership will find a solution, and leadership will implement it. And I've delivered results in all of those areas in the past, and I'm the only one who can say they've delivered those results.
Okay, we've got time for just one last question. Why don't we talk about, there's a huge controversy over the Department of Child Services right now. What do you do?
It's broken. I announced last year before June that would be my priorities, jobs, but I said the day after the election as governor-elect, I'm going to announce a Blue Ribbon Commission, sheriffs, prosecutors, police chiefs, social workers, current employees, former employees, investigators. The system's wrong. If you are here in Highland and you see a case of abuse, you call a toll-free number in Lord knows where, talk to someone in a room, and they make a decision at some point as to whether or not it needs investigated. We need police officers. We need an investigator looking at that now. We've got a director of that department, and I don't mean this politically, but he needs to go, and he'll go the first day. He has bragged about returning $200 million to the state's coffers. And when you do that and children are being harmed, abused, and too many times even worse, it's wrong. We can do better. The program's broken, and we will start the path, going down the path of fixing it.
All righty. Well, thank you. That's all the time I'm afraid that we have right now. Again, for this special edition of the NWI.com Political Roundtable, I'm Doug Ross, editorial page editor at the Times Media Company, here with Democrat John Gregg, running for governor.